So we might also jump into it. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining this live event today. As you can tell, so you've got here, I'm the host today, Mike Pascoe, human performance coach. We got Vladimir Bushun, our influence coach, that's going to be our guest today on 3 critical skills for psychological safety every employee must know. We've got some great stuff going on today. First thing is, just want to kick off and say that, if you have any questions or comments, things that you would like to do, if you can please just put them into the chat. We can both see the chat, which is great. So we'll be able to kind of look at it as we're going through this. I put a little note in the chat that it says that, if you would like to just put a name, put down your name or your, actually it looks like the names are popping up. And also, where you're from and, why specifically you feel psychological safety is really important to you. So that's kind of a little bit of information there around what to expect today. We're going to be, really exciting news today. Vladimir is going to have a draw for those of you individuals that wait until the end today. We're going to put a link up for a survey that all of you are welcome to, fill out at the end. So I will pop that up at the end there for all of you to have a look at. There's going to be a couple really great prizes we'll announce at the end. So that's going to be a really exciting thing to come. And in addition to that, again, if you have any questions along the way here, make sure that you pop into it. But yeah, I'm really excited today to have Vladimir here. And, from my perspective, I look at psychological safety as it's such an important part of what we do every day. And for those of you that attended a presentation with Vladimir and I a couple weeks ago, this LinkedIn Live event on a similar topic, one of the things that I had mentioned at that time was that psychological safety is the foundation for every single relationship and for every single conversation or form of communication. And why that's really important. I look at right now, globally, we've got, over 12 billion lost days every year due to depression or anxiety or things that are related to really a lack of psychological safety, in my opinion. So when I look at it and I think, if I'm truly correct in my assumption here that, we've got 50% of our short-term and long-term claims for disability are because of, this lost work time. And I think it is directly related back to communication. So, that what's really exciting about this conversation today with Vladimir is that he's going to be giving us some great tools on how to create psychologically safe conversations. And that is really, really important when we start to look at how can we make relationships better, going back to that idea as being the foundation of psychological safety. And at the same time, a form of communication. When we think of communication, it could be, basically what we're saying, what we're not saying. And then, of course, we've always got that internal voice in there as well, that, what is it that we're talking about? And oftentimes that comes from breakdowns from communication. So, no further ado, I really want to jump into this talk because it's so important. But yeah, I want to first start off with introducing Vladimir Bushun, our influence coach. He's been doing tons of stuff over this last while. He's an experienced agile coach, influence coach, and management consultant. He is certified as an agile professional and a crucial conversations trainer. He's also the founder of Negotiation Practice Community, which includes over 400 people practicing communication skills. And he's worked with teams in various roles for over the last 20 years, helping companies build effective teams. Vladimir's focus over the years has always been around improving team collaboration and removing obstacles to team performance. And he's worked with Fortune 500 companies such as Wells Fargo, Optum, US Bank, and in the educational industry. And he really, truly does believe, and if you would have seen that presentation from a couple of weeks ago, that psychological safety and effective team structures can substantially improve throughput and innovation. And as a leader, he promotes a culture of inclusion, creativity, safety, and accountability. And if you need to get a hold of him, I'm going to also put up his contact information later on for you to have a look. But I really want to pass it over to Vladimir and say thank you and welcome. Thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Mike, for such a warm introduction. I really appreciate that. So happy to be here.
Yeah, it's actually going to be great. We've got lots to talk about. Again, just as a reminder to everyone, if you just happen to get here a little bit late today, if there's any questions that you have or comments that you would like to put, Vladimir and I both have access to looking at the comments as they kind of pop up, and we'd love to hear from you. But really, I want to kind of kick off the conversation around, kind of what is the secret here? We've got three critical skills, and I think we're probably all wondering, what are these three critical skills for psychological safety that everyone must know? Vladimir, are you going to be able to tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be happy to talk about this. So, in short, it is about active listening, negotiation, and crucial conversations. And those skills are important because, as you said, they're building relationships. And active listening is about learning about other people before deciding. And we know that due to the pace of our life, we oftentimes kind of making shortcuts, and we're looking for, we're listening to reply, we're listening to say something that we want to say, and it is kind of a listening that is very selective, and more importantly, you miss the opportunity to understand each other, unfortunately. And relationship rests on understanding. So we need to understand not only what we hear, but also what's going on with others. We need to pay more attention. We need to know not only what's important for the other side, but also what they feel. We must be able to understand the system of values and their personal identity of the other side. So each person, in a way, is a universe inside, and approaching each person as a black box really doesn't help. When I say black box, I mean if we don't care what's inside people, what's inside their head, what's inside their heart, we treat it like a black box. It works like we provide the stimulus, and we don't care what's happening with this person. We're just waiting for reactions, and then we judge the reactions. And this is a very limited approach. It's not going to work on any depth, because we leave the whole process of understanding up to the other person, and of course it's very hard to connect at that point, because we only connect on the reactions. So like, that's information which we may understand differently than they understand, and therefore responsible leaders, responsible people, you need to be able to walk in other person's shoes all the time, the emotional shoes, the identity shoes, the value shoes, the motivation shoes, all kinds, on all levels. And we must be able to also demonstrate our understanding by kind of feeding back to the other side what we understood, and we need to tell them what's important for them, and we need to tell them back what they feel, and what is their principles and values. So a great negotiator, FBI negotiator Chris Voss, he's saying you need to kind of talk to people empathetically till they say, that's right, very emotionally, that's right, you got it. And only then you kind of have a feeling, you have a sense, an indication that you really understand. You need to say what you see in people. And sometimes when we practice in the community, I have many epiphanies. Almost every time I go to practice, I have some revelation of something new. Like, I was talking to someone in a mock scenario, and they tell me, or that was a lady, she told me, it sounds like the quality of life is important to you. It sounds like quality of life is important to you. And I was like, really? Yeah, it is important to me. It is important. And I was so grateful that it was articulated to me by somebody who is able to listen without any judgment, without any advice, without any sharing. It's not like she said, like, oh, I also have this such and such and such. No, she was in the moment with me, right? And that is, that's active listening. You wanted to comment on that?
No, that's great. I mean, I'm actively listening. To be honest, I'm really enjoying the way you're talking about it because I think it is one of those things that that people well, you take for granted because oftentimes when people are having conversations, as you kind of alluded to, rather than me sitting here listening to what you're saying, I'm sitting here thinking about what I want to say in return to what you just said. And and I actually just almost got lost in just listening to what you said because I wasn't actually thinking about what I wanted to say in response. So, yeah, again, your next one, negotiation. I'm really quite fascinated to hear about this because I was kind of thinking I was like, okay, are we talking about like robbery? We're talking about taking over a bank, like what kind of negotiation are we talking about here? I think it's going to be good to hear about
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this, like, you know, on the overview level, to explain why, what the skills are and what is it about, so to speak. So negotiation, on a high level, is about making better deals faster, making agreements that last, agreements that stick. And we need to be able to do it respectfully, without worsening relationship, without pushing each other, without ultimatums, without drama or threats. And we cannot trade relationships for or reputation for deeds. It's not going to work in the long run, unfortunately. So at the same time, we know that in many cases we resort to things like that. We resort, okay, what can I say? Well, if you don't do this, I will not do that. But
Yeah.
this is not really a long-term approach. Then you start to kind of sacrificing one thing for another. Negotiation is a skill of communication oriented to the future. So there are two professions. There are lawyers, and of course I say it with a grain of salt, with a grain of humor here. So there are lawyers, and lawyers all about the past. They're analyzing everything what happened in the past, and then they make their verdict, whatever. And then negotiators all about future. They're futurists. They create the future, they express, and they paint the future for people. So that's another one. And of course, I have nothing against lawyers. It's just I want to make it contrasting here.
That's a
But
great
I wanted
analogy.
I
Yeah.
wanted to say that's why I like negotiators more than lawyers, because I'm all about the future. So and the great concept here is the concept of unequal exchange, which is offered by Stuart Diamond. Is a great negotiator, still teaching people. And if you want to take his classes, it's available there.
Hmm.
I don't know how much is that, probably expensive, but Stuart Diamond has a book called Getting More, and he was explaining the concept of unequal exchange, which was there since people started to accumulate value. So imagine how hard was, or how easy was, to trade meat for bread before money was invented. People did it. People survived. They exchanged value between each other, and they didn't call it negotiation, but it was a core skill for survival. So they couldn't do anything else rather than just getting together and say, okay, how do we make us more efficient? How do we cannot really both have everything, grow the wheat and grow the cattle at the same time. So we need to specialize. Okay. So and I'm seeing that currently people in more senior positions, they are better at persuasion negotiator. So the question is, like, do you want to grow your career? Do you want to lead people? Learn negotiation. This is about making agreements with people quickly and creating collaborative environments, creating that psychological safety.
Hmm. And I guess that kind of leads into your third one, which is kind of really interested to kind of hear about this as well. Yeah, sort of wrap it up and kind of bring in the third one is how that kind of does that sort of encompass all the other two, or is it kind of on its own? I don't want to spoil the
Um,
title.
it's kind of both. Yeah, that's a good comment. It's kind of both, because Crucial Conversation is a great system. It's a system that it's very structural. So the Crucial Conversation is a discipline that is invented by a series of several authors, and Joseph Graney is one of them. So I always refer him because he is very outspoken. So he goes to different TED Talks and talk about crucial conversation, and has many videos in YouTube as well. So it's a great system that gives you structured understanding, like how do you need to go from step by step in order to prepare for a conversation. And essentially it's beyond conflict resolution, but essentially it is about conflict resolution for the most part. It's again about agreements, but it's kind of like, let me give you the definition. It's about talking when stakes are high, emotions strong, and opinions vary. So if you disagree, emotion goes strong, it's a high stakes, then you may lose your psychological safety just because amygdala, that Amy, just kicks in, and you kind of lose a part of your brain, and you appear to be in a different house, in a house where nothing works, and only ghosts live there. So you need to get back into your brain, and you need to be safe to discuss. And when we discuss difficult conflicts, we need to create that efficiency. We need to create that psychological safety. And crucial conversation is all about creating safe dialogue. So it is like the whole map of crucial conversation is with the big blue dot in the middle called dialogue. The creating safe dialogue is the most important. Around that blue dot is safety. So you need to we need to create safety to bring people into the dialogue. So, and also we need to know how to recognize and surface issues. The problem we have is we do not have enough crucial conversations. We actually give up on many issues and we live with them for a long time. And sometimes the whole life or half of life, we live with a kind of issue and we don't address it at all. We fear to address it, or we don't know how, or maybe there is it's too emotional draining and we just don't want to get into that, right? And crucial conversation is all about how to do it on a low cost and actually creating a relationship, a nurturing relationship, creating respect and mutual purpose. And nothing works without respect and mutual purpose. So relationship is all based on respect and mutual purpose. So we need to understand. And also it talks about accountability, how to make people accountable, how to talk about accountability. And we need to understand accountability is not just motivation, it is also capacity. People need to be available and skilled. If people are not skilled or they don't have time, accountability won't work, even if they want it. So we, as people who understand crucial conversations, we need to be able to help people out in certain difficult situations when they cannot hold their integrity.
Yeah, you know what? There's so many things I want to jump in and kind of ask or talk about with that. I mean, one of the things that popped into my mind, I don't know if you've read information from Shane Snow. He had when he talked about what psychological safety is, he said it's not about being comfortable, it's about being safe. And I think that's kind of what I really appreciated about what you just said there, Vladimir, is that it's about having those conversations that are difficult. You're safe in that environment. And, the one thing that kind of popped into my head when you were talking about these crucial conversations and it being difficult is the stuff around, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I mean, that is such a challenging discussion nowadays in all different fronts. I mean, there's many different levels to that. And I think that, what I see when you talk about these, these three things: active listening, negotiation, and crucial conversations, as a leader, I would want to be very much on top of these types of things so that you would be able to, as Shane Snow pointed out, be able to go into these conversations with comfort, but allowing safety so that, there isn't going to be, people getting hurt in the environment, but, we're going to get past that point of comfort and be able to, to be able to experience and get on the other side of it and come up with some resolutions and some understanding. And, as you kind of said earlier, walking a mile in the other person's shoes. So, to kind of flash back to, a couple of weeks ago when we had the conversation, and then, what I just talked about this morning, I kind of look at it as psychological safety as being like the foundation for, all relationships, all conversations. I'm kind of wondering, what is your kind of take on psychological safety, and how does it fit into your idea around this communication with active listening, negotiation, and crucial conversations?
Yeah, I love this question. Very good question. We all need to understand that connection, because essentially psychological safety is the condition, and we need to know how to cause this condition. We need to know how to create that. And creation of psychological safety is not a job of the company leaders. This is a job for every employee, essentially. That's why I'm saying that every employee need to know the skill, because unsafe situations may happen in every conversation. We need to be ready for creating a better conversation. We need to be better at conversation, period. Right? So when people have communication skills, they manage to resolve problems, they make better deals, and they resolve conflicts without damaging relationships, without trading relationships for conflict resolution. In fact, skilled people know how to nurture and grow relationships as they resolve conflicts. So, for example, active listening is something that makes you feel you're being heard and understood. And when you're being heard and understood, guess what happens? You are ready to hear and understand the other side. And it's not like it's a psychological trick and somebody tricks you into that. No, it's just deeper understanding of what people need. It's better understanding how to make things easy for people. So Stephen Covey said in the book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, first seek to understand and then be understood. And that's a core principle of the psychological safety. How often do you see that people are taking time and talking with, to understand each other? And how, on the opposite, how often do we see that people talking without even hearing each other, or hearing whatever they want to hear? That is not a good foundation for psychological safety in this case, right?
Oh yeah, well exactly, yeah. And I guess that, so those are the three critical skills, and how do they kind of apply directly to the employee? Like, is this an employee thing? Is this a leader thing? Like, I just want to be clear with that, just for myself. Is it how that would work?
Yeah. Well, before I will definitely touch on that, but before that, I wanted to touch on how negotiation and crucial conversation also connected to psychological safety. So
Okay,
I
yeah.
think I talk about that active listening, and active listening is very healing, very nurturing, and very good for relationship and creates trust. And what about negotiation? So um, but it's very interesting definition. I think in the book of Jim Camp, Start with No, he's talking about the Japanese definition of negotiation. So Japanese definition this is the agreement between different parties when every party has a right to say no, or they have a right to veto. When everybody have a right to veto, that means everybody can walk away, and this is the respect-based communication. This is the interest-based communication. And so Jim Camp is a famous corporate negotiator of the past. And he said, I don't want to be liked, but I want to be respected. That's the conversation I'm looking. And sometimes negotiation could be tough, but it always should be based on respect, and the mutual purpose is built on the mutual interest. So people need to find that mutual interest and then make agreement there, and test that to understand that it actually works. It is solid agreement and will last. Okay. And finally, crucial conversation. In crucial conversations, they say respect is like air. When it's there, you never think about it. But when respect is not there, this is the only thing that you notice. I'm being disrespected. So the crucial conversation is all about creating respect. And there are many tools to do that. So also negotiation takes into account that we are all human and that we all make decisions emotionally. So we all um, emotions, we cannot discount it. The emotion is always there. So people who are trying to ignore emotions or advise like, oh, you need to be unemotional in negotiation, don't take into account. No, actually, negotiation is, this, people make decision 100% emotional and then rationalize that. So if you ignore emotional, the psychological safety is at risk. And the negotiation may become a heated debate. So negotiation is very far from heated debate. It is, on the opposite side of the spectrum. It's about understanding. It's about motivation. It's about, seeing a vision of the future, and it's about leaving both parties satisfied, and therefore creating that psychological safety, creating that mutual purpose based on respect. So that's just a formula.
You know what I found really, really interesting about what you just said is you brought up respect, and the last time we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, we had talked about, I had brought up the idea of these 13 factors for psychological safety, and I just want to bring them up as a reminder. So organizational culture, psychological and social support, clear leadership and expectations. Number 4, civility and respect. But it was actually, I would say that, and there's going to be quite a bit of focus from myself this month around civility and respect, just because I think there are so many things going on specifically this month around that. Obviously, looking at, respecting women is an important part of that this month. But psychological demands, growth and development, recognition and reward, involvement and influence, workload management, engagement, balance, and psychological protection and physical safety. But I really love that you brought out that idea around that civility and respect, and it's such a foundational component of psychological safety. And I guess to kind of go back to what I said earlier, if we're going to, kind of think of this as sort of a skill set for individuals, I guess, how would it work for an employee versus a leader? And how would that, is there a power thing involved in this, or is this something that both an employee and a leader are going to be able to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I wanted to answer that question and also a little bit of a question that you asked me before of how this actually works. And essentially, in negotiation and in crucial conversation, you want to avoid power. Avoid power, because when we say power, it means leveraging something. It's kind of like it's violating respect of the other party to say no, to veto, right to veto. So instead of avoiding right to veto and say, well, you don't have a right to veto, you do what I say because I have a leverage. So you will submit to my will because I have a leverage, I have power over you. So this is a kind of negotiation maybe people have when they have all the guns and you have nothing, and you're in a bad spot, and it has nothing to do with the long-lasting agreements. So those agreements won't last. So once you escape that situation, you will say like, I will never deal with these people again because I was disrespected, and that doesn't work for me, and I just lose. So instead of that, we need to actually be smarter, and we need to understand where the solution resides. And in order to find the solution, we need to be able to listen. So there are several levels of listening. Circumstantial listening is like, okay, what happened? What happened? What's going on, right? And we all go. It's called small talk, but it's only a very superficial level of listening. there is a deeper one. There's a like emotional or judgmental, and then emotional, maybe a level of belief, and then we go deeper to value system, what people value, and then maybe personal identity, who they identify themselves with, right? So
Yeah.
It was very interesting example in somewhere on a social media, I don't remember. One guy is showing two pictures, and one showing the picture of a guy in a suit and a tie, and the other one, the same guy in a costume of a Spider-Man. And this person, the host, is asking like, which one is more authentic? And many people say, well, the one in the suit. And he's like, no, the one in the suit is a socially acceptable image. Inside, under the suit, this person is actually a Spider-Man. This person wants to save people. He wants to save the world. You know, this is our authentic self, and we are so oblivious about that. That inside ourselves we are Spider-Mans, we are Batmans, we are
Wonder Woman.
superheroes. Yeah, Wonder Woman. Yeah. So we actually are heroes inside, and we are not seeing it. And active listening about like revealing that. And of course, you need to create a safe environment, because it's very you may feel vulnerable to actually show your identity, right?
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's very powerful, because let's say when you show your identity to someone, so many people feel moved by that.
Yeah.
So
Your
many.
true self. Yeah.
Yeah, when you show true self and you're authentically talking about what you're struggling with, what you're going through, and where you being a hero, people are so moved, and they see themselves in you, essentially. So and this is a power of active listening. And oftentimes you make mistakes, like we start sharing our experience, we start advising, we jump all over the place without any depth, and we are not connecting emotionally, and we're not noticing. We just pass through and not seeing. It's like people like feeling like stone on the road. So not
Mhm.
understanding what they actually want um, is it's actually a miss. And the people who are really good at active listening, they need to understand how to actually um, how to actually get what people want to say without saying it. For example, we were talking about this on one of the practices. What if somebody send you a message over text and send you, "We are running late." What does it mean? And it feels like, well, it's just a cliche. That means they will be here soon. But this is on a circumstantial level. Okay, this phrase has a lot of information in it, and you may say like I'm reading into it, but actually, it gives you a good idea of what to say, how to respond to that. So first of all, if it's information, but also it's emotional, and it's kind of like dynamic going behind it.
Mhm.
So there are many ways to say the same thing, but when it's said this very way, I'm running late, it means more than words. Okay, what it may mean? I'm running late maybe mean that the person is um, trying hard, because it's a I'm running. Running is not walking. We are
Yeah.
trying hard. I'm against the circumstances. We are trying and it doesn't work, right? And we keep doing it because we are running. It's not like it was hard for me, right? It's not the past. We are still trying, right? We care about you. We want to be forgiven, and we are responsible. And I'm trustworthy. The person wants to say, I'm trustworthy. That's why I want to say, I don't want to lose that identity that I'm a trustworthy person. So when you hear people say, I'm running late, you you may see you may hear these words and think of it as a fact, but it's like a whole depth behind that. But people don't say that. They don't say, hey, I am trustworthy and responsible, and I'm against the circumstances, I'm trying hard. No, they just say, I'm running late. That's it. So understanding the true emotional depth is active listening.
Yeah,
And
and that really does sound like hidden meaning. I mean, hidden meaning to the words, right? I mean, it's kind of what you're almost talking about there, which I think is really quite impactful.
yeah, absolutely. Chris Voss likes to, Chris Voss is a FBI negotiator, and he likes to give this example. He's saying, if somebody tells you, "Hi, how are you?"
Good,
What,
fine, thank you. Thanks for asking.
yeah, this is what we usually answer, right? And we say, "How are you?" At the same time, what this truly means is actually people want to take a temperature of, are you ready for a conversation that is, conversation with you about something more important, right? It's taking a temperature. And what he say, like a very efficient go-to label would be, sounds like you have a good place for start for us. So it's like, I'm ready, I'm with you, and please, tell me what you gotta tell me, right? So
Yeah.
very interesting emotion understanding or psychological understanding of what's going on, right? So
Yeah, so I think it's why. I mean, really, why? I mean, you've talked about a whole ton of whys here, really. And I mean, one of the questions that kind of came into my mind around this, I guess, was, is this transferable into everyday relationships, or are we talking about business deals? Like, is that, a lot of us on the call right now, obviously, we interact with business people every day, but we also have our regular relationships. I was just kind of wondering what your take was, because one thing that popped into the top of my head when I looked at, active listening, negotiation, and crucial conversations, I actually started thinking about my conversations with my 7-year-old son. And I started thinking about, and we talked about that the word power in there. It's hard to say that a father does or mother doesn't have power, but I guess we have influence. But I mean, it's kind of interesting to look at it, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, how does it sort of work with you with like everyday relationships? Does it transfer over?
that's a wonderful question, and um, I, I would I would like to really excite everybody here, because yes, it's universal. I mean, it's very good news that it's universal. Essentially, negotiation is about understanding human dynamics. And very simple example of that, again, from Chris Voss, the FBI negotiator and the author of the Never Split the Difference. What he's talking about is um, there is a power in the word no, and there is actually a threat in the word yes. So he is saying that if somebody is asking you a question that triggers a yes, they want to hear yes from you. It's kind of like getting you on defensive, because you think like, okay, I tell yes, it sounds like a commitment, so I cannot back out from that. But when you say no, it feels more protective. And therefore, he suggested a tool which is called no-reactive questions. And instead of saying, hey, do you have time to talk? And you need to say, yeah, reluctantly, yeah, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
So instead, the better question would be, is it about time to talk? No, it's not a bad time, right? Or are you busy right now? It's a better question because it's psychologically safe to answer that, because you say no. And uh, another example that kind of talking about understanding human dynamics, it's like delivering bad news. So in many times at work, we need to we need to deliver bad news. Something get delayed, or something needs to be done, or we need to work extra, whatever. And in order to deliver bad news, people need to psychologically prepare for that. Okay, so how to do it efficiently? You just say, "Hey, I have a bad news," and just say it. Have a bad news. We need to work evening tonight. So in the first second, people brace themselves like subconsciously, like bad news. Okay, I prepare. Hit me. And then they are more prepared to hear the bad news. Okay, that's easier for them to receive that. So um, uh, and another great example of negotiation and people uh, how people becoming easier about finding a solution. And instead of telling people what to do, we need to ask questions, because questions trigger thinking, slow thinking, right? Sometimes it's fast thinking, but for the most part, there are questions that trigger slow thinking. And there's a book, Fast and Slow, Thinking Fast and Slow, very good one. Also explaining human dynamics and psychological dynamics. So we need to ask good questions, and all negotiators are great at asking good questions. So, for example, you can ask something like, "What needs to happen to make an agreement work?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or how the approval process works. Like you want to get a raise, and you say, "Who needs to approve my the increase of the rate?" Right? So you don't say like, "Please go and approve it," or "Please talk to these people." You asking a question, and even if you know the answer, it is much better way of communication because it takes into account the psychological safety.
Mm-hmm. One thing earlier I talked about this idea around, the difficult conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. I'm kind of wondering, from the perspective of crucial conversations, would you be able to kind of sort of think of an example like that where you do have something where it is such a deep, ingrained historical information, but it's a topic that we really need to talk about. As you mentioned earlier, it's got big, high stakes to it. How would we be able to go into a conversation like that, both in a work environment or, could be outside, but work is probably the biggest challenge right now, as a huge component of psychological safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's a very, very good scenario, and I appreciate that you bring it up because essentially when there is a conflict that is lasting conflict that cannot be resolved, and people kind of accommodate to that, many people kind of find the balance there and they okay to live with that, but removing things like this from life is very important. It's kind of like it's like a stone on the floor that everybody need to work around every time,
Yeah.
and it's just hindering the performance of organization. So there are three types of organizations. I just want to real briefly
Yeah.
kind of segue to that. There are three types of organization. According to Crucial Conversations, Joseph Graney talk about this very loudly and very better than me, by the way, but I'm just so fascinated by that. So one type of organization where people have conflicts and the conflicts fester and going around and nobody's addressing that, and even the manager doesn't address that. So it's one kind of organization. The second organization is when the manager eventually comes in and resolves everything, and sit everybody together, they have a conversation, and the manager takes charge and say, okay, now it will be this and this and this. And then a third type of organization when the issues addressed right away, peer to peer, when employees know how to address them without creating more conflict, and they are very efficient in that. They are efficient, and there's expectation that everybody addressing it. And those organizations are the most efficient organization because you don't need to involve manager. You don't need to involve HR in order to figure out what is a respectful way in creating mutual purpose and alignment. What is the expected behavior and what is expected agreement, and how to hold each other accountable for that. It's the best organization. And essentially, Crucial Conversation is about training all the employees to be this way, to feel responsibility for psychological safety with everyone. And somebody in trenches can work with the CEO and hold CEO accountable, and that would be normal. Though it's actually maybe unheard of. If somebody like a lower level manager would speak to CEO and say, you know what, I think our policy is getting violated if we do such and such.
Well, and as I was listening to you there, Vladimir, one of the things that comes to my mind is especially large organizations, they already have code of conduct in place. Most have, organizations that have code of conduct. Everyone in the organization would need to go through it. they would have to basically, at the end they had signed it off. It's 400 pages, but they have to click a box that says, yes, I read every single part of it. And then, they go out into the workplace. Oftentimes they have other trainings such as respect in the workplace involved in there as well. So again, it talks about, don't throw sand in Joey's eyes. And if you do throw sand in Joey's eyes, make sure you apologize and kind of like that. Like there's certain situations in the way you can handle it. And then there's other training which I've worked with within organizations before, and it's called active bystander training. And why I'm kind of bringing this up is that what I'm sort of hearing and what you're saying is I like the two foundational pieces you put down, which is accountability. Well, it actually should be like commitment. The organization is making a commitment, and then they're basically holding everyone accountable to it. And inadvertently, that's kind of what the code of conduct is. And active bystander is really kind of that extra sort of safety net where people on the outside are watching conversations that are going on. So whether it be a meeting when Vladimir is always picking on Mike, but no one says anything. So then one day Susie says, there's three different scenarios. Like, Susie could, walk up to you and say, hey, Vladimir, that, you're not talking to Mike very appropriately. So, that's calling, out, kind of thing. And then, that's calling in. And then calling out would be, in the situation, you're actually taking them away from that and then talking about it. And then the third, of course, as you mentioned, that kind of idea around supervisory, where, you're talking to the manager. And of course, as all of us on this call probably know, that one doesn't usually go very well because, conversations that, you need to have managers to step into usually don't resolve very well because there's kind of hard feelings. So I guess what kind of popped into my head there with all of that is there a way to, as you kind of said, with these modes of conversation, be able to have that conversation with a an employee and a CEO or someone at a higher level without feeling that, like, what is the foundation that you need to set in order to kind of break that barrier? Kind of comes to my mind.
To break the barrier of
the barrier from, the barrier is, of course, from me as the employee, everyday employee. If I ran into you, the CEO, in the hallway, kind of what is that barrier? I mean, we talk about that barrier being the lack of psychological safety. And, obviously these three things that you bring up today, which are, super important. I'm wondering how that could be in the moment sort of utilized with someone like myself. Is there something that's foundational before these things, or is it just, these are things that you could kind of jump into right away?
Yeah. I think that when we talk to higher ranks, we all feel anxiety for one or another reason. It's hard to bring something serious, and especially bringing something like an issue at work, for example. Believe it or not, higher ranks feel the same way. They feel intimidated by those penetrated questions from the employees talking about those issues, and they're trying to escape. And because they experience that so much more often, then they actually kind of design the tactics to kind of talk about something else. So I was at some very interesting meeting, with informal meeting with some higher ranks in some big banks, and we went there, and I said something about work which I didn't really intended to make dramatic, and I said something to the point like, what's the hardest part to succeed at the project, is something like that. So it was kind of like a rhetorical question just to start a conversation, and that high rank got defensive and started to say something like, well, I don't expect you to start poking holes in my plan, or something like that. And I was shocked that this went this way. And one of my colleagues said, okay, Vladimir, talk about the vacation time now. let's quit talking about work. And I kind of saved the day. And I'm seeing that it's kind of like a tension on both sides. So people don't get used to talk to each other and understand each other, and it's like all defensive all around. So to break the barrier, people first of all need to understand each other. They need to kind of understand how to speak and what triggers the others, and what will be the best strategy to approach building relationship. Once relationship is built, then it's easier to talk about something else. And first of all, when we talk about relationship, we need to talk about respect and mutual purpose. Because if that executive didn't understand my purpose and why I'm asking this question, guess what she was thinking? She was thinking that I'm trying to attack her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I need to clarify. And Crucial Conversation has a wonderful tool called contrasting to clarify the intent. So it works very easily. So essentially what I should have said after I hear her saying that, I should say, oh, I really didn't want to be judgmental about anybody's work. I just wanted to start a conversation.
Yeah, well, and you know what kind of popped into my head? I was just looking over here, and Robin put a thing down here: understanding words, intentions, and meanings. I mean, I think that's kind of what we're talking about there. Is that like nowadays, I mean, phones, we text and we get ourselves in trouble. We do an email, we get ourselves in trouble. We have a conversation person to person, we're still kind of getting in trouble. But it's like the breakdown of communication. And I think Robin did a great job of talking about it there, understanding words, intentions, and the meanings. Because in the moment, you'd certainly had no wrong feelings or hardship around the way what you were saying, but there was maybe potentially a little button that was pressed in that individual about that topic, right?
And that happens all the time. It happens every day. So contrasting is my go-to tool everywhere. And it's so easy to construct. Like, let's say you made a comment on a meeting about someone's plan, and you see this person become defensive, and you say, I don't want to criticize the plan. I just want to have, I want us to succeed together. Right? So you clarify your intent. I don't want that. I want this. Maybe another example could be like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm right and you are wrong. I want to learn how it works, right? And misunderstanding of the intent is, I would say, it's the biggest danger, because there is a kind of like not a principle, but more of a something that you may need to test, but something that you assume is right, okay, is that when you understand somebody else's motive, and it's a good motive, you can speak about anything. So it's the motive that makes the conversation safe. When you understand that person has a unselfish, good motive, shared motive that helps you, that you're in the picture, you can open up. But if you think that person has a selfish motive, unhealthy motive that hurts you, you got to be defensive. Absolutely. Yeah. You won't open up. Yeah.
Well, and interesting. So Chia Chen Wei, she had said, sorry if I said your name wrong. Culture is a big factor, and I mean, absolutely. I would say that what you're kind of talking about there is sort of like, what is the culture around this? Because if there is kind of like hard feelings or sort of toxicity, and people are sort of used to having sort of negativity in the environment, it almost like you put your hairs go up in your back, right? You're kind of always on the lookout for that sort of negative environment. Yeah. I guess one of the things that kind of popped in my head as we started getting to the end of the conversation today is that what would you recommend to company and team leaders who are desperately trying to improve their culture and build their strong teams? Like what would you recommend, given according to what Chia Chen said? Yeah, I mean, it's a tough conversation.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing in the corporate environment is that most companies, most leaders in those companies do not articulate any plans around building high performing teams or building psychological safety. They look more on how to equip and educate people so they can work faster. And they look to create alignment so people work towards the same goal. And nobody's talking about psychological safety, or they don't talk about this enough. There's some training somewhere on the website that you take only once a year and you check off all the boxes and you're done. So that's how far it goes. But psychological safety is being a catalyst for building high performance teams. It's the key.
Yeah,
And
well, and I mean, obviously, and I, our conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, I was sort of saying that, the I would say that these incredible employee experiences that people have, within an organization, and then sort of like embedding all of psychological safety, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, code of conduct, respect in the workplace, and everything within the entire employee life cycle is sort of what you and I have talked about as sort of a solution to it's actually ingrained into everything. So as you said, it's not that one annual a year sort of tick box, as I sort of alluded to with code of conduct or respect in the workplace. It is about actually having something that embeds directly right into the culture itself. And I think that's probably what everyone's talking about here. There's Robin mentioned that culture, the environment, and the individuals. And it's great that you mentioned that, Robin, because the other thing that we've talked about in previous conversations is around there is two different types of culture. There's the culture within an organization, and there's also the culture within the team. And that is kind of an interesting dynamic, because I mentioned being in a large organization before, where I said that I knew that I would we were on the right path to having a psychologically safe space if we could have a global town hall and people would put questions on the global town hall that actually had their names attached to it. At the time, there was never a name attached to any question. So it was very clear that there was a culture of that lacked psychological safety. And, throughout the organization, that particular organization, there was a number of other teams that would have really strong teams of psychological safety, and others that wouldn't necessarily have a strong, foundation of psychological safety. So great call out, everyone that's on the call right now. We're coming a few minutes away from the end of the call. Just wanted to see if there's any other questions out there that you all might have for Vladimir. If not, I think we'll kind of work towards wrapping up, just to respect everyone's time here. And yeah, great, Chia Chen. Also, the style of leadership. And again, I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, Vladimir. But it's definitely that's a whole other talk unto itself, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did you have anything else you wanted to sort of wrap up with, Vladimir? Kind of last tips for our audience? Crucial skills.
I wanted to kind of add a little bit more about the advice to the leaders of the company. So I agree with you that the culture stems from the top, and everybody know this. So what this means, it's not the job of you cannot delegate it, essentially. So culture is the job for CEO, essentially. And some companies understand that, some CEOs understand that, and they hire professionals, and they are responsible for building effective teams based on psychological safety. They invest in strategy and tactical plans to build culture and performance and accountability. And unfortunately, the traditional corporate structure, as it is, with all these delegations and all these branches and departments, is kind of like indifferent to psychological safety, kind of like thing on the side. And many times it works against it. And my recommendation to the company leaders who want to build the culture of performance, accountability, and innovation is to think about this one question very seriously. How much risk do you want to take by leaving creation of psychological safety up to a chance?
That's a very great ad, Vladimir. I mean, it really is. Oftentimes, I would say, especially when COVID was, sort of was, disappearing, and we were kind of heading back into office, and everyone's was talking about culture, and trying to get culture reactivated, and it was sort of like we need to go back into the office to create this culture. But it's what came to my mind is that what it's lacking is the intentional creation. It doesn't matter the environment in which it's in. It's about intentionally trying to say this is what we are aspiring to as an organization, and this is where we're kind of headed. But I really love that ad at the end, Vladimir. So we're heading into the wrap up here. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We've got some great news. If you weren't there from the very beginning, Vladimir's he's got a draw where you'll be able to actually, I'll put up in a second a place where you'll be able to go to do a quick little summary of kind of what your thoughts were around the event itself, and a couple of prizes that Vladimir is going to talk about here as exciting for that small little bit of effort.
Yep. And also I wanted to invite everybody to a masterclass that will be happening tomorrow while Mike is putting together the prizes. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is this is a masterclass. This is the URL to access that. It's a private event, and I only take 30 people, not more, because it's highly interactive, and I provide personal feedback. If you would like to sign up, well, you can click there right now, or you can send me a message and I will send you that link to register. So it's 4 p.m. Central Time, so pretty much as today when we started.
Okay, and I'm just going to also post just on the screen here. So this is going to be the survey link for talking about this again. This is going to be a survey, and this is going to be related to the prizes that Vladimir is going to talk about right now.
Yep. So. Well, this is a survey, and you just provide your feedback about this conversation, and there are just a couple of questions there. They are not very difficult, and the first prize is the 1 hour persuasion power session, and the second prize is a 30-minute introductory negotiation session with me. So. I'm excited to hear back from you and understand, what you're dealing with and what is important for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone who's attended today. We absolutely appreciate your feedback, your support. I think we all have the same aspiration. I always say this. We all are truly in this together. So I'm really looking forward to. So anything that you may. Questions you may have afterwards, certainly feel free to forward them on to me or to Vladimir. And just one other last ad here is that both Vladimir and I do talks, weekly or bi-weekly type of thing. If you're interested in getting involved with either one of us to maybe get your message out to the world, or if you just have some really important things you would like to share with us, we would love to hear from you. But once again, thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future at another event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.